Everyone. Nice to see you all here. My name is Rob Booker. This is part of our robotic trading webinar series. And this webinar presentation is titled How to Set Up and Run the Finch Robot. You can find more information about the Finch robot and everything that we do at robbooker.com. We're glad that you're here. My name is Rob Booker. I've been a trader for 17 years, mostly a discretionary trader. And recently, at the beginning of 2016, I decided to move all of my trading to robotic trading. It's been the best decision I ever made. In today's presentation, I want to share with you, together with my friend Wes, hi Wes,
Hello.
the details on how to set up and run our favorite trading robot. This webinar is part of a series of webinars that will show you how to set up and run the robots that we use in our own trading and that are offered for sale at robbooker.com. In today's webinar, you're going to need the Finch robot, your own copy of it, a virtual private server, or a desktop or laptop computer where you can run MetaTrader, and you're going to need some time. Most of us want to get up and running really quickly, but if you give yourself a couple of weeks, you'd be surprised at how much you can learn. We'll start today off by just saying a couple basic things so you know if you should be here or if you should just leave. What's a robot? It's a program loaded onto your trading platform that takes trades automatically whether you're asleep or awake. It replaces or assists a trader in making trading decisions, managing trades, and closing trades. If you're not interested in those things, this is not the presentation for you. We have written a fairly comprehensive guide that answers most of the basic questions about how to get up and running and how to start things out. I am going to, if I can, there we go. I'm going to copy this link and put it inside the chat area of this webinar. I also want to show you what this looks like on the web. This is a document written in Google Docs, and there's a copy of this document inside your robot members area for those of you that own the robots. And this is a full description of everything that it takes to start up and run the robots. If you're confused at some of the terminology that we use, or you're anxious about how to get something set up and change the settings, that guide will help you do what you need to do. Now, in today's webinar, we have an agenda. Now, that's not a very good look at the agenda, so I want to switch over here to what I think might be easier to read, and I'll expand the text. Today, we're going to talk about a variety of things. Why would someone run the Finch robot? What is the Finch robot built from? How to install it? How to install an indicator to help you plan and take the trades? Answering questions about magic numbers and how long to wait for second trades, and so much more. The first thing I want to do is answer the question, why would someone want to run the Finch robot? So we'll take a look at my trading account. This is one of my live trading accounts, and I'm running the Finch robot. I'm running the Finch robot in this account because I like to have a lot of trades. The reason you would run the Finch robot is because you want to run a robot that takes a few trades a day, at least. The trades are reasonably consistent. They are reasonably able to get themselves to their profit target over time. Most trades will close fast. Some trades will take longer. But generally speaking, the robot is consistent. It's stable. It's been run by over 1,000 people around the world, and it's been proven to work over time. Past performance is, of course, no indication or promise of future results, but we like to run something that's consistent. And I'll repeat this again. The reason you would be interested in the Finch robot, or otherwise known as the Rollover Finch robot, is if you want a lot of trades. We have other versions of this robot that take far fewer trades, but I like the Finch to be active in the market. It's fully robotic. It enters and exits trades without any input from me. I'm running it on the Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, the euro, British pound, the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar. Wow, that's disgusting. The New Zealand dollar, US dollar, and the euro, Canadian. So obviously there's been some news out of Canada today. I don't really care. It's totally irrelevant. My recent performance, and we'll talk about why the performance looks the way it does, is between $20 and $40 a day, and each week I increase my trade size. I'll explain that in a moment. I'll explain why I recommend that you follow that same methodology. So in answer to the first question, someone would run the Finch robot in order to get a lot of trades with a robot that over time has proven to be reasonably consistent. But there's another question. What is the Finch robot built from? What is it basing its trades upon? I'll answer that question. For those of you totally unfamiliar with this, let's take a look at a recent trade that it's in right now that's not doing well at this moment, but is bound to come around. This is the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar currency pair on the 5-minute chart. The Finch robot is loaded onto this chart and it's running live. This is real money, it's not a demonstration account. The Finch robot recently took a sell trade right here where my mouse is circling the candles. The red lines that you see on the chart are known as Knoxville Divergence. I built Knoxville Divergence while sitting in a coffee shop in Knoxville, Tennessee in 2013. It is an indicator that shows automatically when price is moving in one direction and an oscillator is moving in the opposite direction. You can get this indicator for free if you simply Google Knoxville Divergence Indicator free. You will see links where you can download this indicator for free on the web. If you have any problems with that, you can simply send me a text message or let me know. If you listen to my podcast, you know how to get in touch with me, and so I'll just leave it at that. Most of you already have this indicator. I'm not going to describe the way that this indicator was built because that information is available to you when you download the indicator and you put it on your charts and you get it for yourself for free. When the Knoxville Divergence indicator shows bearish divergence, the Finch robot will take a single trade and it will attempt to take that single trade and make a modest, easy-to-reach amount of profit. For example, recently, the New Zealand dollar, US dollar, printed a bearish divergence on the 5-minute chart. When it printed that bearish divergence, the Knoxville Divergence was there, and the Finch robot took a sell trade, and it made a profit on a very small move lower. Later on, it took another trade, and it made a very small move lower and took profit. Sometimes, however, the trades don't work out that easily. Sometimes when you take a Knoxville Divergence trade, it doesn't take profit immediately. In this example, the euro-British pound had a bullish Knoxville Divergence trade that immediately went into profit, and then another one that immediately went into profit. And then another one that took a trade, and then the trade went against us, and it dropped way lower really fast. This is an example of a trade moving against us with the Finch robot. There are many examples of this across our charts, but I want to find a couple more. Okay, here's an example. This is a buy trade on the euro-British pound. It went up a little bit after we took the trade, but not enough. And the trade went against us, and we were in a losing trade. And the price moved against us, moved against us, moved against us. And after it had moved against us a considerable amount of time, which we'll talk about in a moment, the currency pair printed bullish Knoxville Divergence again, and the Finch robot automatically took an additional trade according to its instructions. Price rose, and it exited both of those trades, and it made a profit. In other words, the Finch robot takes one trade and tries to win. If it is a loss, it can take one more trade in the same direction and try to exit the entire position. We call this rolling, sorry for the errors here, rolling over a trade. When we take one additional trade in the same direction. Because of the way that Knoxville Divergence is built, and because of the way the Finch robot is built, this turns out to be a powerful combination and incredibly reliable. It's no promise of future gains, but most trades can work themselves out. If trade 1 isn't a win, trade 2 is taken, and typically the Finch robot will end up with a profit within a reasonably acceptable period of time. Today we'll talk about how it takes trade number 2 and how you can increase your chances of success by inputting the right settings on the robot. We'll also talk about the best settings for the robot. We'll also talk about what currency pairs we like to run it on. But I want to take a break here and say a couple of things about the technology and then hand over the presentation to Wes. These robots run on the MetaTrader 4 platform, which is absolutely free and widely used by currency brokers all across the world. You can run the Finch robot on any broker that offers MetaTrader 4. You can even contact Justin Hertzberg at Forest Park FX, and you can get a pre-installed version of the Finch robot on a VPS if you open an account with him. If you want more details about that, you can just reply to any email that we've ever sent you, and we'll send you Justin's contact information. Today we're going to set up the robot and show you how to install it on your platform. It's pretty easy, but it does take some getting used to the first time that you do it. But I want to emphasize the following. We don't run robots on other trading platforms because this one is making money. We could build this robot for a variety of other platforms, and one day we might. But the point to trading for us is to make money. And if this works and it makes money, we're just going to do it, regardless of the fact that there might be a financial instrument out there or a trading platform out there that other people like a lot. Many of you have written to us 1,000 times, and you've said over the last year, could you please make the robot for my charting platform? And during that whole entire year, legions of other traders were making money running it on plain old MetaTrader 4. In my life, I have often waited for perfect and ignored good at my own expense. So if you've been waiting for this robot to come out for your favorite trading platform, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Give it a shot on MetaTrader 4, and then when we have it ready for your platform, you'll be an experienced Finch trader. What I'd like to do now is invite Wes to take over the presentation and show us how someone might go about installing the robot on their MetaTrader platform.
Awesome. All right. I should be showing my screen now. Is it showing the correct screen? Sweet. And it looks okay?
Yeah. It looks like my screen. I got 50 different things opened up.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Cool. I'll take that as a compliment and kind of move on from there. So when you download the robot from the website, I don't know if you want me to show the website and where to download it from, Rob.
Why not?
All right. Cool. In the Rob Booker Trading Robots course, when you scroll down just past the video, you'll see some release notes, and you'll see some other information that's kind of pertinent to the robot. The robot's guide, the pip value calculator, which I think we'll also be showing in this webinar, and then some of the questions that are answered in the video that we're talking about right now, actually. But over here on the right-hand side under Downloads, you'll see the Rollover Finch.zip, which is the robot itself, and then you'll see a download for Rob. That's the settings that Rob likes the most, and I think we'll also be going over that too. And when you download them, the robot will be in a zip file, and hopefully you know how to extract a zip file. But in Windows, you just right-click and press Extract All. So that's relatively simple for a Windows machine, which is the only machine MetaTrader runs on anyways. So, all right, once you've extracted it, you'll have the ex4 file, which is the actual executable robot itself. It's the I don't know, it's the robot. It's the thing that actually performs all the functions that the robot does. The MQ4 file is just source code, um, and we'll use both of them inside of the platform. However, if you ever find yourself with just an ex4 file, that's the actual executable file, and it works independent of the source file, the source code. You don't actually need the source code to run robot or run an indicator in MetaTrader. We just included it for anyone who likes, I guess, messing around with source code of MetaTrader. Okay. Actually, getting it into your platform, that's the slightly more complicated part, but not too bad. I'm going to open up MetaTrader. It's really big on my screen right now. All right. I'm going to go up to File, and then Open Data Folder. This is where everything MetaTrader goes. So indicators, experts, even history, data, all of your tester data, just everything MetaTrader goes into here. And so the data folder is pretty much where you're going to start whenever you're putting anything into MetaTrader. So I'm going to go into MQL4. Now what we've got, we call them robots. And I think Rob actually explains this in the robots guide. But we call them robots, but they're actually called expert advisors in MetaTrader lingo. And I have no idea why they call it that either, Rob. I think it's kind of ridiculous and the dumbest name for something ever. But
yeah.
So when we go into experts, you should only see a few in there that are default MetaTrader robots. They don't work. I mean, they function, but man, you try testing these things, and they're pretty terrible. But I don't know if you've ever tried testing those, Rob, but man, I tried the other day, and they're just bad. So, okay. So I'm going to bring up both folders side by side, because that's how I found it to be easiest to get the robot into here. I'm not going to go over computer functionality, etc. But basically all you want to do is select both of them, and then right-click and copy, and then go over to your experts folder, then right-click and paste. That's really it for this part. I'm getting the expert advisor or robot into the experts folder. It doesn't get much more complicated than that. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it. And if you're using a virtual private server, you would simply open up a web browser, and then you would go to the course on the website, just like Wes did, and then download the robots. Many of you have said at certain times that when you're in your VPS that getting Google Chrome or using Internet Explorer or other internet browsers can be a real challenge. That's definitely true. However, I've been trying it out on a bunch of different VPSs, and I either use Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, and I've been able to do it after a little bit of just fumbling around. So if you get into your VPS and you open up a browser and you go to the website and you log in and you download it from there, then your download file will be on your VPS, and then you can follow the instructions Wes just used. If you get absolutely, completely stuck and you are ready to throw your computer out of the window after trying for at least, I would say, 30 minutes of watching this and repeating the instructions, send us an email or send me a text message, and we'll try to give you some help. Okay, Wes.
Cool. All right, thanks, man. All right, let me go back into MetaTrader. Okay, so the Navigator is actually where you've got your expert advisors and indicators if you've installed any. And the Navigator can be opened by clicking on this little gold folder and star button or pressing Control-N. And then I'm going to use the little drop-down thingy here to get expert advisors open. You'll notice that the Rollover Finch robot is not in here. if you right-click inside of this area anywhere, even if it's on something, and you right-click, go down to refresh, and it'll show up right there. This is relatively new, so if you haven't used MetaTrader in a long time, before you had to exit MetaTrader and then go back into it, etc. But this is relatively new, just refreshing, and then anything that you've installed that's new shows up here on the Navigator. And so that's getting the robot into your platform.
That's awesome. Nicely done. I mean, that was like slick. Okay, so now, what if someone knows already that they want to be able to show that Knoxville Divergence indicator on the same chart where the robot is running? Many people don't realize that just putting the robot on the chart it will not automatically also put an indicator on the chart. So just putting the robot on the chart is not going to show you the indicator as well. And some people say, oh my gosh, I want to see that indicator so I can see where the trades are being taken. So do you mind, Wes, if we go to the web, and now you go to your course. Now it's free, and like I said, you can send us an email if you don't have access to this. This is the free indicator that you can download for MetaTrader and other platforms, and you scroll down and you download the version of the indicator for MetaTrader.
Yep. All right, so it's actually in the downloads section over here on the right, and it says mt4indicators.zip.
All right,
now,
so let's just go ahead and do that. Let's just do it.
Okay, yeah, I actually already did it. I
Okay.
got all this stuff already loaded. Let's see, MT4 indicators. Now, when you actually look in the MT4 indicators folder, I already unzipped it, but we'll go ahead on into the zip folder anyways. That way you can see what this actually looks like. When you go into the zip folder, you'll see a lot of indicators. Daily pivot points, ghost pivots, grab candles, Murray map, TFL yearly pivot, etc. And then there's Knoxville Divergence. This is the one that we're looking for this, for the purposes of this, video webinar thing. So I already unzipped it, and I removed all the other ones. That way we can just see Knoxville Divergence, and it's version 3.5. And again, all you need is the .ex4 file. You do not need the MQ4 file. That's just source code. This is the actual indicator file itself, the thing that performs all of the calculations, etc., on your platform. So we're going to put this on our platform pretty much the same way we did the robot. And we always start from the folder that I had mentioned before, which is File, Open Data Folder. This is where we always start when we're putting something new on MetaTrader. I'm going to go into MQL4, and instead of going to experts, I'm going to indicators this time, because this is an indicator. Inside of here, you're actually going to see a lot of indicators. Like, MetaTrader comes with a lot of these just
Yeah, and
here.
you can delete them if you don't use them. I would leave them in there, but you can delete them if you don't use them.
Yeah. Well, and if you delete them from here, I think they even still stay on your platform. It doesn't even matter. So
yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's
all right,
unfortunate.
yeah. All right. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm opening up both windows right next to each other because it's easier for me to see what's going on. I'm just going to right-click and copy, and then right-click anywhere inside of here and paste. And there it is. Knoxville Divergence V3.5.
All right, so what we're going to do now is get both of those put onto a chart. Now, before we do that, or as Wes is about to do that, I want to mention you do not need the indicator on the chart to run the robot. This is one of those questions that comes up often. You do not need to download the indicator. What I said was some of you like to see the indicator on your chart so that you can see where it is taking trades. So let's change to a 5-minute chart since that's where we're going to run the robot, and anytime we show a different chart we get 900 questions about whether or not that's the chart we like. What we want to do now is we want to show you, Wes, could you show us how to get the robot onto the chart and the indicator onto our chart?
Yep, I can do that. We'll start with the robot. So back in the Navigator, remember Control N or this little gold folder star button. Under Expert Advisors, we've got Rollover Finch V23. I'm just going to drag and drop. So in case you don't know what a drag and drop is, you click on it, you drag it, and then you drop it.
So go to Common first. All right.
All right. So in the Common tab, you're going to notice the most important thing that you've got here is under Live Trading, Allow Live Trading. You want to make sure that that is checked. If it's not checked, you're going to get a frowny face. All right. I don't know if there's anything else on here that you wanted to show, Rob, but
Nope, just leave everything else alone.
okay. Then we're going to go to Inputs, and I will change the inputs according to however we need them to be set. I don't know if we want to go over inputs right now or later, Rob.
We'll go into that later.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to press OK. And up here in the top right, you should see Rollover Finch V2.3 with a smiley face. If you don't see a smiley face, then make sure that your little auto trading button up here at the top is pressed. And that way, for sure, you should get a smiley face. If you've done Allow Live Trading and Auto Trading, you should have a smiley face. If you don't have a smiley face, remove the robot from the chart by right-clicking on the chart, going to Expert Advisors, and then Remove. And then just repeat this process again with this button checked. And then if you still don't get a smiley face, then send us an email because the planets have not aligned or something, and things are, I don't know, something may be seriously wrong, but you could have a smiley face. Because if you've done those things, there's no smiley face. I don't know. I got nothing for you. All right. So now for the Knoxville Divergence indicator, we're going to go back into the Navigator, and we're going to drop down the indicators list, and then we're going to double-click or drag and drop the Knoxville Divergence indicator. For this indicator, there's really nothing that you need to change. Everything can just be left as is for the indicator. There's nothing even in the Common tab you need to mess with. I'd really just leave it exactly as it is unless you wanted alerts of some kind. And I don't think this particular video is going to be about alerts, so I'm just going to press OK.
And Wes, these arrows here, a lot of people want to get rid of them. Let's talk about how to get rid of those arrows.
Okay.
A previous version of this Knoxville Divergence indicator, in a previous system that has worked really well but we don't use right now, used these arrows, and they were called reversal tabs. We don't use them, and in order to delete them from your chart, you can simply change the stochastic upper and stochastic lower settings on your indicator. Stochastic upper would go to 99, and stochastic lower will go to 1. If you click OK, the indicator will not be able to show those arrows any longer because it's just not, it just isn't going, it's not going to do it. So you'll be good to go.
Huh. I like that. You know what? I didn't even know that. That's something new for me. Sweet. All right. Well, that's loading the robot and loading the indicator on your chart.
Okay. Excellent. I'll check the agenda. Okay, let's talk about the settings. Let's go to the robot settings, Wes, and right now we're going to talk about some of the most important questions that come about the settings on the robot that people have sent. Surprisingly, I'm getting a question in the webinar, Wes, that's absolutely hilarious. People are saying, where can I find the Finch robot? I don't have it. They want to find the download link to the Finch robot. So Wes, can you go to a browser and we'll show 2 places that people can go?
Yeah.
So I know this question's really confusing people, and if you don't know that answer, then that's crazy. Okay, first place to go, Wes, is to Kajabi, and go to the My Library area on Kajabi. Okay, in your library, you should see a course titled the Rob Booker Robots. There it is. That's where you'll find it. Number 2, Wes, go to a new tab and go to robbooker.com. And at the top of the page, you'll see the word The Robots. You click on that, and you go ahead and you get yourself the robots. Okay, let's go back to the chart. That was a deviation for people that were a little bit confused. Okay, what we'd like to talk about now is the settings. We're going to walk through these settings one by one, and we're going to make sure that they're as easy to understand as possible. You might want to go slowly through this section and repeat anything that doesn't make sense. A lot of times we've answered your question, and just by watching it a couple of times it becomes clear. The first is very important, and we say this often. Using a robot carries risk. Do not open an account and put your robot on a live chart with real money. Do not do that if you've never done it before. Even if you have done it before, don't do it. Right now, I'm running a robot that Nimmer built called, well, we haven't come up with a name that I like. And I love the robot, but it's running on a demo account. It's making money. I'm very happy with it. I'm running it on a demonstration account first. You will find, even though you think you know what you're doing, I make mistakes all the time, and so will you. Make those mistakes with fake money first. Another note is to download the Robots Guide. This guide is the guide that teaches you how to set up robots, how to get a VPS, what a virtual private server or VPS is, and so forth. That link is right inside this setting, or it's on the website. Those are two very important things that you should read and do before you start. Okay, the next one is the magic number. Wes, what the heck is a magic number?
Well, I have no idea why they call it a magic number. That's another one of those irritating things that they called something, and I could never figure it out. But the magic number is a way for the robot to associate trades with itself. So let's say the euro-US dollar is placed, the Rollover Finch has placed a buy trade or whatever on the euro-US dollar. It gives that trade the magic number of 12345, which can be changed if needed. But there are very few instances where you will need to change this magic number. So for instance, one reason that you would want to change the magic number is if you are running the robot on the same currency pair in two different places. Say you wanted placing buy trades on one and sell trades on the other or something, but that's not a good way to run the robot, and I would highly recommend not doing that. So for the purposes of this robot, you don't need to change this magic number. It's only a way for the robot to associate trades with itself, but the robot actually looks at the magic number, and it also looks at the currency pair of each trade that's open on your platform. So if the magic number doesn't match, it skips the trade. If the currency pair does not match, it skips the trade, and it doesn't look at it, it doesn't count it, it doesn't associate that trade with itself. Now, if the magic number matches and the currency pair matches, then it will continue, then it'll look at that trade and it will associate that trade with itself. So,
what about running it on two different time frames? Could you theoretically change the magic number and run the robot on two separate time frames and not have it mess up?
Yes.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically. I mean, there are a drove of issues that can come up, but none of them have to do with the robot. It just has to do with.
You would never want to do that. Yeah, you would never want to do that. There's no reason to do that. If you decided to do that, do it on a demo account first and see if you like it. But so there you go. You do not have to change the magic number ever. It doesn't matter if you're running the robot on 10 or 20 currency pairs. You never have to change this number, ever. You don't have to change the magic number if you're running this robot and another robot. You don't have to ever change the magic number. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Candles back, I'll answer that one. If you go back to the chart just for a moment and we look at those Knoxville divergence lines. So let's double click on the indicator, Wes, itself, and we're going to talk about the candles back. The Knoxville divergence indicator can draw long lines or short lines. It can look for divergences that span great lengths of time or small periods of time. The candles back number tells the Knoxville divergence how far back it should look. Our favorite setting is 30. You must make sure that your indicator setting is at 30 and your robot setting is at 30. Or if you'd like to change that, make sure it's changed in both, and that way you can see when a trade would have, should have, or did execute on a chart and match it up to your robot. Candles back at 30 simply tells the indicator and the robot how far back in time should we look when setting up a trade. You can play with this number on your own on the indicator to see what the differences are. There's no need to change that unless you become an advanced backtester and you want to try some different things. Okay, and then we can move on to the properties. Slippage, what does that mean?
Slippage is it's actually more of a broker side setting. So when you place a trade, if the market is moving really quickly and the broker does not fulfill that, or I guess place the order, I don't know what the correct terminology for that would be, but if they don't actually place the order at the exact price that you say tell it to buy, sometimes the price can slip. So the price moves just a little bit away from the price that you wanted it to buy or sell at. Slippage is the number of pips that it can move in that direction or in either direction before the robot just says, yeah, never mind. So if the robot tries to place a buy trade at 1.1246, but then price slips because the market's moving really fast or something like that, and it goes down to 1.1240, that would be a 6 pip slippage, and it would not place the trade.
So sometimes you'll see a divergence on your chart and it won't take a trade. And you'll be, whoa, that was supposed to take a trade. And you will just feel like you want to throw your computer out the window because you can't figure it out. It's either because the slippage setting was violated or the max spread setting was violated. Each currency pair has a spread, the difference between the buy price and the sell price, or the bid and the ask. We have included a max spread setting so that if during news times when the spread increases or afternoon times when the spread increases, your robot will know not to take a trade when it's just too hard to cover the distance and make up the spread. We have a setting at 5 because I think that's reasonable. If you trade an exotic currency pair like the US dollar Mexican peso, you need to increase this max spread to a number that reflects a common everyday spread on that currency pair. Talking about each currency pair's relative spread is outside the scope of this webinar, and we're going to assume that if you're running it on an exotic currency pair, you're smart enough to figure that out for yourself, and or just you enjoy losing money. So the max spread says do not take the trade if the currency pair's current spread is greater than 5. You can change the setting to increase the spread that you are willing to accept. I leave mine at the default of 5, except in cases where I'm running it or testing it on an exotic currency pair.
I'd like to bring something up that wasn't included in our, actually it probably hasn't been included in most of our webinars, but I've gotten a question about a handful of times. When you have a 5 decimal place broker, sometimes you'll use a robot or whatever where they tell you that you need to add a trailing 0 to the numbers. So instead of a 5 pip slippage, you would put 50 or something like that. This is not the case. Use a 5 for 5 pips. Don't use a 50 if you have a 5 decimal place current or a broker. Just use a 5 for 5 pips. 10 for 10 pips or etc. So you don't need to put a trailing 0 after these for any reason. 5 equals 5 pips, 6 equals 6 pips, etc. So just throwing that out there.
And those settings can be different for every single chart you run it on. So you can change all of these settings on every single separate currency pair or chart you're running on. Okay, first trade lots and second trade lots. As I mentioned earlier, the Rollover Finch or Finch robot takes 2 trades maximum. The first trade comes when a Knoxville Divergence setup appears on your 5-minute chart. We run all of these robots on the 5-minute chart. You can experiment with other time frames as you like. Once again, we run all of these on the 5-minute time frame. You can change around the time frames as you desire. The first trade lot setting should be set to 0.01 when you first run the robot on a live account. If you're trading in a demo account, man, make the first trade giant. Just watch it blow up. But when you're running it live, make your first trade size 0.01. I did it, even though I built the robot with Wes. Even I did it on a $90,000 account because something can go wrong. So the first trade lot should be 0.01. Now, if you move down to first trade profit in dollars, we're going to talk about an interesting relationship between trade size and profit target. For every 0.01 lots you trade, which is a micro lot worth about 10 cents a pip, and it changes from currency pair to currency pair, but don't get your underwear in a bunch about this question. For every 0.01 trade size, you should put as a profit target $1.30. So Wes, if we change it to 0.02, what's our first trade in profit?
2.6.
2.6.
Right.
And so forth. For every micro lot or 0.01 as your first trade size, your profit target should be $1.30. You can change as you experiment. These are the ideal settings for beginning your trading with the Finch. For every 0.01 trade size, you should go for $1.30 in profit. So if you increase that number, you should multiply that by $1.30 to get your profit target. Later on, I'll show you my settings, and we'll talk about that. So let's go back to 0.01. That's the first trade size. As you can imagine, you're not going to make more than $1.30 on a trade. You're not going to be paying off your mortgage anytime soon with the Finch robot. We want you to stay tuned for the remainder of this presentation where I'll show you a 1-year plan where you can increase your trade size to have more dramatic results. The second trade size should be set to 0.03, which is 3 times greater than the first trade size. The second trade is still small, but it's 3 times larger than the first. This means that if your robot takes a trade and that trade goes into a loss, it will attempt to take a second trade later on with a much greater trade size, and it will only need to make up a little bit of the distance in order to make our original profit target of 1.3 or $1.30. That second trade profit in dollars means when the robot has opened a second trade, it looks for a total combined profit of $1.30. Not $1.30 on the first and the second, just a total between the 2 trades of $1.30 total. So one could be at a loss and one could be at a gain, and combined that equals $1.30. It closes everything and it shuts it down. There are over 1,000 traders around the world trading the Finch robot, and traders have their own ideal settings for the trade size and the profit targets. But these are the only approved settings to begin your trading, and you should only increase these settings over time. And until you become an experienced trader and tester, you should not adjust the ratios or the second trade profit in dollars or any other setting, and we'll talk later about how to increase these over time. Do you have anything else to say about that, Wes?
No, that was very involved and in-depth. It was awesome.
Pips to Trade 2 says that we will not even look for a second trade until our first trade has gone negative by 70 pips. This means that you may have a first trade that goes negative and a brand new divergence that appears almost immediately. The robot will ignore that. In other words, the robot only gets interested in trying to get out of trouble if it goes deeper into a loss. Think about your own personal life. If you're at work and you forget one part of your lunch at work, you don't panic. Small problems do not require big solutions or panicking. And you all know people in your life that panic immediately whenever the smallest thing goes wrong. The other day, the garbage wasn't picked up. For some reason, they didn't come. My neighbor came out of her house and started screaming bloody murder. It was the biggest deal in the whole world, like she had a dead body in her garbage can. It was a small problem and she panicked. The Finch is not a robot meant to panic. Please do not set your pips to trade to lower than 70. If you do, the robot will begin to take second trades too quickly. It will try too hard to get out of trouble, and it will dig itself into a deeper hole before it can really get out. Some traders increase the pips to trade to numbers like 500 and above, meaning they give the robot a lot of room to get itself out of the first trade by itself. This is not a bad idea. 70 is a good number. You may change this depending on the currency pairs you're trading, but 70 is the same number I use across every currency pair. The settings you're looking at right now, I use these settings on every currency pair that I run the robot on, and I do not run the robot on exotic currency pairs, so I do not need to change these settings. The default stop type is no stop loss. In other words, you're the stop loss. In other words, you, the individual, before you begin running the Finch robot, you make a decision. I will close these open trades if they reach a certain stop loss that I have in my brain. If you can't trust yourself, you can always put a stop loss in dollars in the robot that reflects your own personal viewpoint about how much of a stop it needs to have. I do not run it with a stop loss in the robot. I simply watch the trades, and I know that I'm going to only close my trades if the total number of open trades exceeds a loss of 5, 6, 7%. Otherwise, I keep them open and I don't worry about it. I want to stop here for a moment, Wes, and mention a way that someone could run this robot using a stop loss and a profit target. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. If you are interested in running this robot with a stop loss, do this with your settings. Change pips to trade to 20,000. In other words, never take a second trade, ever. Place a stop loss at $1. That's a 10 pip stop loss for a micro lot. Place your profit target at $3. Now the Finch robot will look for a divergence, open a trade with the micro lot. It will try to make $3 or 30 pips, and it will stop out if it reaches a loss of 10 pips. Once again, the 1-to-3 ratio is very important when running the Finch. You can change it to $10 and $30 or $100 and $300, depending on the lot sizes that you're working with. And you can adjust trade sizes versus stop losses and so forth as you desire. You could, for example, place a stop loss at $2, which is 20 pips, and then you would need to have a profit target of $6, which is 3 times greater than your stop. What you're now doing is you are trading a Finch robot with a stop loss and a profit target with a really nice risk-to-reward ratio. You'll see me in coming weeks experiment with this and talk about it with you on webinars and in the morning webinar and whatnot. But for now, let's go back to our original settings, the settings that over 1,000 traders around the world are using, which is 0.01, 0.03, 70, and then $1.30. All right. So a lot of you are asking questions that I've already answered, and it just appears that you came a few minutes late. And just because there are people here that have already been here the whole time, we won't answer your question. If you find that I'm ignoring your question, it's simply because we answered it earlier. Okay. The second trade profit, I always keep as exactly the same of the first trade profit. Whatever the first trade profit is, I keep as the second trade profit. You may see me with numbers that are different sometimes. I sometimes break that rule. Don't hold me to it, and don't be so regimented that you're like arguing with me about it. Sometimes I just forget to change it. Okay, break even is a setting which allows you to move a stop loss to break even when you've made a certain amount of profit. We naturally set this to false because we're not interested in break evens. We never use this setting. If you would like to experiment with it, you could tell the robot, yeah, sure, set the setting to true. We want you to move to break even when you make a certain amount of profit. And then you could say, so let's change that to true. And then let's make the break even at 50 cents, 0.5. This means that when the robot has made 50 cents on its first trade, it will move the stop loss to break even. And then, if it goes back to 0, your robot will close out, and it won't even open a second trade. So, or if it's already opened a second trade and it's made 50 cents, then it will move the stop loss to break even. I haven't found that this setting matters or helps me at all. I have this always set to false. None of the other settings are important. We can walk through them quickly. RSI period and momentum period refer to settings on Knoxville Divergence. Please don't change those unless you're doing advanced testing and you'd like to experiment. Don't forget, if you change those settings, you need to change the settings in your indicator as well. The mail alert, pop-up alert, sound alert, and smartphone notifications are irrelevant, and they're really something you would research in a webinar about alerts, not about the robot.
Cool.
So, once again, some of you are asking questions that I've already answered. Like one person saying, why can't you change the magic number? I never said you can't change the magic number, and I'm asking you to watch the recording so you get an answer. Jean-Marie asks, what happens when two Knoxville Divergence come very close? We've already answered that question as well, so I'm not going to repeat that one. Louise says, stop type refers to a trailing stop or fixed, a fixed stop. About 100 of you are asking if this webinar is recorded. Clearly, you don't read my emails. In every single email I've sent out about this, I've basically said this is being recorded. I always record the webinars. We always know that some of you need to leave. We always want to take care of you on that. Okay. Some interesting questions came up. Do we ever try to add a third trade? No, I do not. Others do. Can you use this robot in a 1-minute chart? The answer is yes. All right. Let's go back to the agenda. Oh, you can switch it over to me.
Okay.
And I'll show my screen. It's nice to have everybody here. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy to see so many of you. We've covered all of this stuff so far, and now I'm going to answer some questions by writing on the chart, writing on the screen. Okay, let's do optimal currency pairs and how many pairs to run. My optimal currency pairs include the Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, the euro US dollar, the euro Canadian dollar, which we're going to come back to in a moment, the US dollar Japanese yen if you want something Japanese yen style. You could run it on the British pound US dollar, and you could run it on the Australian dollar US dollar. All of these currency pairs are some of my favorites. Since this webinar is recorded, I'm not going to repeat myself. The euro Canadian dollar is the original and best. If you run this robot on one currency pair, run it on this one. Can you run it on the US dollar Mexican peso? Oh, yes, you can. But remember, change your spread settings, slippage settings, and profit settings to reflect the pip values of your particular exotic currency. Trading exotic currencies is way outside the scope of this presentation, and I'm not going to spend any more time on it. If this is really fascinating to you, take the time to learn it and tell us what you find out. Wes, we have a pip value calculator, and if you put that inside the webinar, inside the chat box, you will see Wes put a pip value calculator link. Some of you have asked, well, with currency pairs having different values across the board, I'm worried that with a trade size of 0.01, my profit target really shouldn't be $1.30. Let me write it down really clearly. I do not change profit targets for different pairs. I actually don't think it's necessary. However, we've just posted inside this webinar and on the screen in front of you right now a pip value calculator. And it looks like this. How much is one pip movement in the euro dollar worth in my currency? You can download this indicator and it will give you an indication of what the pip value is for that currency. Once again, I never change my profit targets based on pip values, so I don't care about this. And if I don't care about it, I'm encouraging you not to care about it until a later date when you can do some of the testing and experimentation with what we've already shown you. All right, Wes, we're not going to do some testing here, but we will come back later, maybe on Monday's general webinar, and we'll do some testing of running the Finch with a stop loss. We've shown you how to do it. We're not going to do that right now. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is backtesting with Wes here on the line. It's a perfect time to do it. We're going to backtest Finch with these settings on a $10,000 account without a stop loss. And we're going to show you that it can have problems. We're going to test one currency pair in 2016, and we're not going to use a stop. We're just going to use the standard settings. I want to reaffirm to you that if you have a $1,000 account, a $500 account, or a $50,000 account, I encourage you to run your robot live at first, regardless of the size of your account, with these tiny trade sizes, regardless of the size of your account. Sounds crazy, but it puts us all on level ground, and it makes sure that everyone is trading the original settings first in order to learn how that works. All right, Wes, if you want to take back the screen, we're going to do a back test. And while we do this back test, I'm going to give you a couple of warnings while Wes sets up. We have full instructions on this inside the guide. We're not going to teach you how to do a back test in this presentation because it's written inside the guide. Backtesting is useful, but it's not necessarily the most important thing in the world. Some people become obsessed with backtesting and finding optimal settings that work perfectly. We find that, especially with the Finch robot, and please hear me, if you endlessly backtest, you will never make any money. You will just become obsessed with backtesting. It's super important to just find some settings that seem to work okay and then just start trading it live. That might seem dangerous to you, but remember our trade sizes are so small, it's a good idea just to get started. Okay, what we've done here is we've loaded data, and we're going to watch the Finch take trades. We're not going to watch it take trades. We're going to run a report to see how well it does with the settings we've just shown you on a 5-minute chart on the Euro-US dollar. Instructions on backtesting are included in the guide to running the robots. We've placed a link to this in your robots course inside this webinar chat area, and when we send you the recording of this webinar, we will include that link as well. How'd the robot do, Wes? Let's look at the graph first.
All right.
Okay, it made money. This robot, although it got into trouble at every point where you see a dip, this robot actually made money in 2016 without changing any of the settings that we have. And what that means is every single trade it took came back into profit eventually. So if we go to the report, Wes, it took how many trades? And give us the rundown.
All right, so it took 96 total trades. It made a total net profit of $96. And the drawdown, the biggest drawdown that it saw was 0.68%.
Okay.
Those are the only
Awesome.
things that ever really cared about. Oh, and the modeling quality is 90%. Always make sure the modeling quality is 90%.
And if you have any, now, once again, many of you are flooding the webinar with questions about backtesting. I'm gonna put this link up again. Download this guide and read it and learn how to do backtesting. This is not a webinar about backtesting. This is a webinar about running the Finch robot. It is not a webinar about optimizing, trade sizing, or other things. But I do want to mention some things that are naturally going to come up in your mind. Today we've mentioned a trade size of 0.01 and 0.03. Some of you say, oh my gosh, I have a small account. I have a $500 account. I'm going to quickly run past a 1% loss on my account with those settings. And I'm sorry to say, you have a small account. There's nothing anyone can do for you. What you need to do is just take a bigger risk with a smaller account, and you need to intervene or close trades if they reach a max loss, or you need to run the robot on fewer pairs. So let me say this again. The larger your account, the more currency pairs you can run. The smaller your account, the fewer you should run. I recommend that everyone start by just running one, regardless of the size of your account. I cannot stress this enough. Some of you with small accounts want to grow your small account quickly. Finch is not the answer. Finch will grow your small account into a massive account if you give it enough time, but it cannot make you rich quickly. Our friend Scott in Australia, which is the inspiration for many of you wanting to run the robots, started with a very small account and made sure that things were running correctly and then increased the risk over time. I'll share with you a plan for doing that later on in the webinar today. How much backtesting should you do? I think you should do one backtest that looks exactly like what we just did, and then you should run the robot on one pair in your trading account, and that's it. Next, Wes, what I want to talk about, if you want to look at a chart, I want to just talk about what to do when Finch gets into two bad trades. Okay, let's just use this as an example. And let's say, Wes, if you want to draw a square on the chart in the valley down below before that chart just blasted off upward, an arrow or a box, you can go to Insert and then Shapes.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and then just draw a rectangle right in there.
Right in here?
Yep. For the purposes of doing this webinar, I want to share with you a very brief description, and then I want to give you a longer answer. Let's say that your Finch opened a sell trade in the blue area, and then it opened a sell trade up above where you see the divergences. And then let's say that the trade just even went further, and it went even up again. It's highly unlikely, but in that event, you are stuck in what we call a bad trade. And you begin to wonder, what am I going to do now that I am stuck in a bad trade? In 99% of all instances, you should do nothing because your trade size is small. In 99% of instances, you should do nothing. So hand the webinar back over to me, and I will write this on the screen. Nothing, nothing, nothing. If your robot gets into two bad trades, resist the temptation to jump in and help it do its job. Your robot does not appreciate being second-guessed, and because the trade size is small, you should not have a big problem. If you reach a loss greater than your max percentage, close it. Don't worry about it, just close it. Last of all, I want to show you a simple technique that will be a free blog post that's coming out very soon to go into greater detail on how to do this. This is almost done. And it's a blog post called How to Predict a Market Turn. In the event that your robot gets into a lot of trouble, I have created a small blog post instructional course on how to predict that the market is turning. And you can use this information to use super long-term charts to take trades to get yourself out of trouble. And then I have a video course that will be $7 unless you're a lifetime member. So my answer is, once again, do nothing. If your loss is greater than your max loss, close it. Or watch the upcoming course, Market Turns. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Daryl, our friend, ran the robot last year, didn't ever intervene, and Finch got out of most trouble. I never intervene, Finch gets out of most trouble. If you find yourself getting worried, I'll have a blog post ready for you to talk about market turns and big time stuff. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to check and make sure we're still on schedule here. We're going to end in just a moment. You can trade the robot in as many currency pairs as you want inside your platform. It's perfectly fine. All right. Some people are asking how long it takes Finch to get out of trouble. Days, weeks, months, rarely. Usually it's out of trouble within a day. Sometimes it takes a week. Occasionally it'll take a month. It just depends. It just depends. We just don't know, but the point is that we're all very patient, right? We're all patient here, and usually it's relatively quickly. Should the robot news? No. Unless major Greek votes or Brexit, major things that I will send you an email about. Otherwise, no. Not for non-farm payroll, not for interest rate decisions. No. No, 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 no. You just saw the Euro US dollar Finch on the 5-minute chart get backtested, and we did not close it for Brexit in that backtesting. We do not shut down the robots before news unless it's so major that we just cannot stand it. So the answer is usually we do not turn it off, almost in no instances. If you want to, do it. A lot of people say, well, I do it because, well, if you have a reason why you're doing something, great. A lot of other people just do it because they're worried. Doing something because you're scared is not a good reason. What happens if MetaTrader 4 closes, Wes? Will the robot pick up where it left off?
Yes, it will.
And you don't need to do anything. If your MetaTrader closes, the robot will pick up where it left off.
After you reopen it.
Right.
Just want to add that little caveat there, because
yeah,
if you just leave MetaTrader closed, it's not going to do anything.
Leave MT4 open all the time, or your robot will stop trading. That's why we use a virtual private server. If you don't know what a virtual private server is, look at that Getting Started in Robotic Trading document that we showed you at the beginning of the webinar. You should not run more than one robot at first. You should wait and only add another currency pair after you've got experience running it at the beginning. All right, I'm now going to give you a 1-year plan for running Finch. This sounds simplistic, it sounds dumb, it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it does. The 12-month plan for running Finch is to focus on the Finch and nothing else. That's the only one. Forget about every other robot we have in our courses. Forget about every other robot that you could dream of. Forget about building your own robot. Give it 12 months. Give it a shot. If it sounds boring and like a job, then welcome to being a professional trader. The plan is this. Run the robot with 0.01 and 0.03 for 1 to 2 weeks. Then increase the trade size each week by 0.01. And then 0.02, 0.06, 0.03, 0.09, 0.04, 0.12, and so forth. Increase the trade size and the profit target each week as long as you're feeling comfortable. And as long as you're feeling comfortable, regardless of the size of your account, if you feel comfortable, then keep doing it. If you feel nervous, that's because you're beginning to sense naturally and instinctively that the trade size is too big. Now, you shouldn't make a permanent decision to change the trade size just because you're afraid. But you should realize that until you feel completely comfortable, you should not increase the trade size. What will happen over time is that you will not only become very good at running the robot because you've seen it go through every kind of trouble, you will become wealthier because the robot is gradually making more money as the weeks and months proceed. This is the slow growth, long road. When you take the long road and play the long game, you end up 12 months from now as an absolute expert in running the Finch robot. At some point in time, you are going to cap out your trade size increases at a point where you just absolutely cannot increase the trade size without feeling you're doing something stupid. I would recommend doing this on 1 to 2 currency pairs, and I would recommend, if you have a very small account, only doing it on 1. If you have a trading account less than $1,000, only run it on 1 currency pair. As far as anything else goes, you should stay in touch with us. As a lifetime member, many of you here are lifetime members. You have access to the chat room. You have access to a community of people running these robots that do this together. Now, I am considering that some of you, after watching this video, are going to make it through about a month. And then what you're going to do is you're going to increase your trade size to some astronomical number because you just can't take it anymore. And I understand that some of you still have to work out the gambler in you, and that's fine. That's not part of the 12-month plan, though. And just remember, no matter how well it seems to be working for a 4-week stretch of time, at some time, one day, Finch will calmly, happily, and sweetly kick you in the bottom. It will one day get itself into 2 trades, and they will go bad. You must have a max loss that you're willing to accept and a plan for dealing with it. And we will be here for you all throughout the way. We'll do a separate webinar about getting your robots out of trouble. Today's webinar is not long enough to do that. So we will, in the future, hold a webinar and talk about what happens when your robot takes 2 trades and gets into trouble. Last of all, I want to say a final warning. Everyone wants the perfect bot. Everyone wants it. It's a robot that takes hundreds of trades and all of them come back into profit, or that it grows 100% a year. Everyone wants the perfect robot. And what we have found is that if you want a lot of trades, you have to accept trouble. But if you're willing to accept fewer trades, like 30 trades a year, then we have a robot for you that almost never gets into trouble and makes a big gain every time it wins. That's called the Finch Time Sessions Robot. And next week's Wednesday webinar at the same time, we'll teach you how to set this robot up, how to backtest it, and how to use it. It's only for people that want to take fewer trades that have a higher probability of success. But waiting around for these trades to happen can take a long time and make you really frustrated. So we'll be back next week. We'll put the recording up on the web, and we'll send you an email about where to find this recording inside your course and on the blog. Thank you, Wes, for being here. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Happy trading with the robot.